Good afternoon. Welcome to The Forum, a weekly program of the Columbus Metropolitan Club where we cultivate the conversations and connections that drive Columbus forward. The Forum brings together visionary leaders, including CEOs, members of Congress, artists, movers, shakers, and decision makers, to examine issues that matter, exchange diverse perspectives, and forge connections that create a better Columbus. I'm Tony Bell. I'm president and CEO of Phoenix Consulting Company, a lifetime member of Columbus Metropolitan Club, and a board member. For those of you joining us by live stream, we're coming to you live from the beautiful National Veterans Memorial Museum in downtown Columbus. Thank you so very much for being here, and thank you to today's amazing sponsors, the Columbus Partnership, Ian Alexander Photography, PNC, the Robert Weiler Company, and Smoot Construction. We'd also like to thank Downtown Columbus Incorporated for providing today's parking. We love free parking, don't we? Yes, and thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to the presenting sponsor of our live stream, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and our partners, the Columbus Dispatch, the Columbus Metropolitan Library. We're also grateful to the National Veterans Memorial Museum for hosting us. Yes, every CMC forum takes a whole village because it's a whole production. So let's thank everyone for supporting today's forum. I'm so excited to be with you in this new year because today's forward-looking conversations is CMC's annual Blue Chip Economic Forecast. We're so excited. It's the 27th annual release of the Regionomics Columbus Economic Forecast. It's also the 25th year in a row that CMC has hosted this very great tradition. So with that willpower, will Central Ohio's economy in 2026 go forward? What's keeping business leaders moving up and keeping them up at night? What trends will define the year ahead? And all of those questions that you have, guess what? We're going to find out today. To introduce our amazing panelists, please welcome Mary Auk with today's forum sponsor, PMC. Mary, the podium is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Tony. Well, thank you, Tony. We're happy to be here today as well. I want to welcome all of you, those of you that are here in the room in person, and those of you joining by live stream. On behalf of our PNC employees, many of who are here in the audience with us today, we wish you a very happy and prosperous 2026, and we welcome you to CMC's Blue Chip Economic Forecast. Now, besides our hope for a national championship in football being dashed, I don't know any other event that we look forward to more at the start of the year than this event here today, and we're happy to be back as your sponsor. PNC is excited today to be represented at the event as part of our commitment to investing in and supporting the communities where we all work and live. This means that our team members are here locally across Central Ohio addressing your needs and your concerns. Today will serve as a great guide on what to watch for as economic uncertainty is reshaping how leaders make decisions here in 2026. There's so much to unpack: market trends, fiscal and trade, policy dynamics, and the forces that are shaping the year that's ahead of us. Now, we all know the buzzword in 2025 was tariffs, and while it may be a bit too early to determine this year's word, I can tell you with great confidence that organizations all across our region and across the country are assessing risk, uncovering opportunity, and positioning themselves for sustainable growth in a volatile economic environment. We're seeing this every day in our conversations across PNC, across our coast-to-coast footprint. Here at home, we think you'll see that 2026 may well be a pivotal year across Central Ohio. And today's panelists will share their expertise and provide insights about our community, its standing as a booming Midwest city. What measures are being taken to ensure that enough residents are here for each vacant or newly created job? What developments will attract even more people to our community? Then there's the housing issue. Central Ohio's housing market is awaiting Fed policy decisions, but the impact is anyone's guess, especially when it comes to Columbus's affordable housing issues. Today's forum is designed to provide insights from our local experts as to what we should expect in 2026 and beyond. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming today's incredible panel. First, we have returning Kathy Bostjancic, Chief Economist for Nationwide Mutual. Dr. Aravind Chandrasekaran, Dean of the Ohio State University's Fisher College of Business. And as always, Dr. Bill LaFayette, owner of Regionomics. And our host, once again returning to CMC, Ben Lanka, business editor for the Columbus Dispatch. So to kick us off, as we do each year, I invite Dr. Bill LaFayette to the podium for the official release of the Regionomics Columbus Economic Forecast. Bill, as always, we hope the news is good.
Well, thank you very much. Happy New Year, everybody, and thanks so much for being here. And for those of you streaming now or later, thanks for tuning in. And as always, a big thanks to the sponsors and to my friends at CMC for making this the first forum in January for so many years. The first thing I need to say to you is that I am so sorry for last year's forecast. You may have heard about the big downward revisions in U.S. employment estimates last year that cost poor Erica McIntyre for her job at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Turns out that the Columbus MSA statistics were way off too, but rather than too high, they were way too low. The initial estimate for our 2024 employment showed a gain of 0.2% over 2023. I said to myself, that can't possibly be right. So I nudged the individual sector employments upward and got a gain of 0.5%. And that's what I used to develop the 2025 forecast. As it turned out, though, rather than nudging the estimates, I should have shoved them. When the revisions came out, they showed a 2024 gain of 1.2%, pretty close to the national average. So I alarmed you for no good reason, and again, I'm sorry. The fact is that these monthly estimates are much less reliable than they used to be. The estimates and their trends, of course, are what drive the forecast. The initial 2025 estimates seem much closer to reality, but I approached them with much more skepticism than I did last year. And after playing around with the numbers, I got a 2025 employment gain of 14,600 net new jobs, or 1.2%, far better than the U.S. gain of 0.9%. The economy is certainly facing some headwinds this year. Tariffs, consumer sentiment, sticky inflation, and the immigration crackdown. Not many economists are expecting a recession. However, they said exactly the same thing in the first quarter of 2008 when we were already in one. So if you don't approach economic forecasting with a healthy dose of humility, you're not paying attention. Assuming no recession, I'm expecting an employment gain for the Columbus metro area of 8,000 net new jobs, or 0.7%. National forecasts are generally landing for the U.S. economy around 0.5%. I'm expecting marginal net losses in many sectors, with the notable exceptions of construction, healthcare, and state and local government. And that certainly does not mean a lack of job openings across the board. The Ohio Labor Market Information Bureau's 10-year employment projections are that 92% of all job openings in Central Ohio are not due to growth, they're due to replacing existing workers. And lots of that's due to old people like me, but certainly not me, retiring. So if you've been tuning into these forums, you know that I like to take some time to reflect on something that's on my mind. Lately, those have been issues that I think we as a community ought to be paying attention to. And those issues, things like the skills mismatch, housing affordability, and economic equity, are still relevant. But this year, I want to do something different. 2026 marks CMC's 50th anniversary. I'm sure that we're going to be celebrating that throughout the year, and I want to start us off with a quick overview of how far Central Ohio and our economy have come since CMC was born in 1976. The first thing is how different our skyline looked back then. The LaFayette Tower was there, of course, but it was still the LaFayette Lincoln Tower. The Rhodes Tower, which was then just the state office tower, had just opened, and one nationwide was under construction. But there was no Huntington Center, no Rife Center, no AEP building, no county building, and where one Columbus is now at Broad and High, there was a parking lot. Not a good look for the crossroads of Ohio. The directional malls, Eastland, Westland, and especially Northland, were thriving. The short north was boarded up and dangerous. The malls thrived at the cost of retail downtown. In May 1976, Columbus City Council approved $112,000, which converts to about $645,000 in today's dollars, for a new downtown development plan. We were licking our wounds after being rejected as a location for a new Volkswagen plant, but the next October, we got Honda. As 1976 began, we were growing again after a brutal 16-month recession that hit Columbus much harder than average. Our employment growth in 1976 was still slower than average, 2.4% versus the nation's 3.2%. Franklin County's population was 869,000. We've grown 56% to 1.36 million in 2024. That's a skosh less than the 59% national average growth. Growth was much slower here than average in the 1970s and 80s. It's much faster than average now. The city of Columbus was 552,000. Now it's 933,000. Dublin was around 2,000, but growing rapidly in the 1970s. It was 49,500 in 2024. Hilliard's up from 8,200 to 38,800, and Grove City's up from 15,400 to 44,000. The opening of the last leg of I-270 the previous August has certainly helped that growth. But there were more than 116,000 acres of farmland in Franklin County in 1976, 1/3 of the county's area. That was down 58% to less than 49,000 in 2022, and more has disappeared since then. Our economic region was much smaller in 1976, and the population of that region was much less. The federal government defines metropolitan statistical areas based on worker commuting patterns. In 1976, The Columbus MSA was 5 counties: Delaware, Fairfield, Franklin, Madison, and Pickaway. It's now 10 counties. The population of that smaller region was 1.08 million in 1976. Our current MSA is 2.2 million. And I'll share one last news item from 1976, and then I'll tell you why. Mayor Tom Moody's Council for Economic Development adopted 5 development goals at the end of July. They were these: maintain positive growth in Columbus and Franklin County, maintain the economic vitality of downtown Columbus, establish programs to reduce unemployment in Columbus and Franklin County, increase the economic vitality of the inner city and minority participation in the economic growth of Columbus and Franklin County, and finally, develop a 6-year economic development plan and program. I bring this up in part to point out that the more things change, the more they stay the same, but in part to bring up the discussions that lay behind that effort. There was a whole lot of angst over whether the goals should be for the city, the county, or the 5-county metro area. Outside communities were not represented in the council, and as the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission's Bill Habig pointed out at the time, these communities' goals can be in conflict with those of Columbus. Clearly, regional cooperation is much stronger now than it was then. I've seen a big improvement just in the time that I've been hanging around. And I always argue that the regional cooperation that has developed over the last 50 years is one of our greatest strengths and gives us everything that we need to address our challenges. So that's a quick overview of where we were in 1976. And I did that whole thing without once bringing up disco fever and the Dixie Electric Company. I resisted that with great difficulty. But now I guess I've done exactly that. Apologies. Again, a very happy 2026 to all of you, and thanks for listening. Ben, take it away.
Thanks, Bill. Takes a big man to admit he was wrong last year, so we appreciate you for that. And you gave us some historical perspective, so I want to give some of myself that is really personal for me. You know, if Doc Brown sent Marty McFly back today to save his parents, they'd go to that faraway age of 1996, the year I graduated high school. So yes, I am now George McFly. Now that we feel appropriately old, we can look back on a tumultuous 2025 and what lies in store this year. Several major projects moved along, with both Anduril and Honda battery plant expected to begin production this year. Intel, on the other hand, had another year of tumult, with a CEO change, the Trump administration threatening the new CEO, and then buying a stake in the company. The basic problem still exists for the local plants, however, and that is that Intel needs to find a buyer for the chips they hope to produce near Johnstown. With that said, Kathy, for you specifically, from inflation concerns to tariff uncertainty, to interest rate battles at an increasingly politicized Fed, what factors do you see being critical for the general economy in America in 2026?
Well, thank you, Ben, and happy to be here, everyone. Happy New Year. So yes, 2025 was much of a roller coaster and lots of things to try to digest coming particularly out of the White House. There's still a great deal of uncertainty, but we think it's diminished quite a bit as well. So you talked about the tariffs, Ben. We may get an announcement on Friday whether some of the IEEPA tariffs were actually constitutional and legal. But our view is that most of the kind of angst and uncertainty around the tariffs are behind us. So peak uncertainty is behind us. And I think that is really going to help unleash a lot of economic activity, business investment, and even hiring. Bill spoke about that. We think one of the things that really got held back quite a bit in 2025 was hiring. I think companies were just sort of paralyzed like deer in headlights, like, whoa, what's coming at us? Tariff, immigration changes, what else is happening? And I think they've worked through that, and better than many economists thought, frankly. They've managed, whether it's they ate some of the costs of the tariffs and shrunk their profit margins. Some of it got passed through to the consumer, no doubt, but not, I think, as much as some people had thought and wagered. So I think that is really critical, and probably the biggest factor underpinning our forecast is this diminished uncertainty. Doesn't mean, again, that it's near zero, could still be heightened, but it's a lot less than before. And fiscal policy, we're going to get a real big shot in the arm here from fiscal policy. One big beautiful bill, whether you think it's beautiful or not, it's going to add quite a bit of stimulus, and tax refunds just alone in the first quarter through the early part of second quarter, are estimated to be $50 billion higher than last year. Many people don't even realize they're going to get a bigger tax refund. Well, we as Americans, we like to spend. Consumers, our savings rate's pretty low. So that goes directly into stimulating economic activity, and we think that's going to be, play a big role. And then, talked about businesses, the incentives that come from for businesses, both either for equipment or building factories, is pretty substantial, and that also provides stimulus, we think, for the economy. So there are some offsets, right? Of course, we know that there's questions on what happens with the ACA subsidies, right? They could really hit a lot of Americans quite hard, but it's not going to offset. When I do the math, it doesn't fully offset, or not even half of the tax refund increase. And then consumers are also going to enjoy tax cuts throughout the year, and I was just reviewing the numbers while I brought my phone up here, but it's quite substantial. You have no tax on tips, there's no tax on overtime, no tax on auto loans, and no tax on Social Security, enhanced child care tax credits, enhanced tax deductions. So it's quite a bit in the works. There is some offsets, so conservatively we think it adds about 0.4 to GDP growth this year, but we're looking for 2.2% growth for the full year. Solid, and I think more consistent. Actually, though, it's going to match the 2025 growth forecast. We had thought growth would come in a little bit below 2%, but the third quarter, you may have seen, was a barn burner, right? GDP growth was 4.3%. And again, even though it was a seesaw in terms of growth, GDP growth throughout the year, it ended the year pretty nicely despite the government shutdown. So we think growth is solid, and I would say the risks are maybe on the upside for economic growth. And that said, we also know we'll probably talk about it. I don't want to go through everything right now, but there's, of course, increased geopolitical risk out there. So nothing's a sure bet, as Bill said. We have to be humble as forecasters, but the fiscal policy, the Fed cutting rates, we think that supports economic activity this year.
Thanks. And Aravind, Bill, what do you think of those factors playing the most important here locally in Central Ohio?
Again, thanks for having me here. Happy New Year, everyone. I completely agree with Kathy on her things about the tariffs. The tariffs, some of the uncertainties are well behind us, but it's not over yet. Now, what has tariffs done for us, again, if you think about what happens locally, is a lot of initiatives where reshoring has happened, where people have brought jobs back to make sure that they have enough supply for them to actually serve the needs of the consumer. And what that means is that it's going to create more problems. And what are those problems are workforce development. Now, do we have enough skills economically and here that can allow us to make sure that these jobs are done clearly? So what I see is that these one problem getting over, but another problem is going to happen. But these are good problems. I agree with Kathy on that. These are really good problems for us at Ohio to actually face, because what that means is that if we can actually have better workforce development done here, either Ohio State and other universities and other technical education done here, what that means is it's going to create a better workforce that can combat some of these uncertainties going forward. So what I see is that there is a lot of positive opportunities because of some of the uncertainties, but while the peak of the uncertainties are over in the past, we still might find some fluctuations coming forward.
I would pay close attention to the national economic indicators. The forecasts are calling in general for a relatively slow start to the year and a better second half. So it seems to me that we shouldn't be overly alarmed by weak employment and GDP readings over the next few months. If those persist, though, through the summer and into fall, that's when we should worry. I pay close attention to the results of two economic forecasts, two surveys of economic forecasters, I should say, from the Philadelphia Fed and from the National Association for Business Economics. You have to be a member to get the NABE survey, but the Philadelphia Fed survey is free. Are people changing their minds about the economy? That's something to either celebrate or worry about.
Thanks. Columbus and Central Ohio have seen consistent growth both in population and economy, at least in my lifetime. Recently, that has been largely driven by an increase in immigrants moving to our region. How will the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration affect our region's ability to grow? That's open to anybody.
I'll take it. That is actually one of the things that I am really, really worried about. There are three sources of population growth. Births less deaths is the natural increase. Then you have movers in versus movers out relative to domestic locations, and then movers in versus movers out internationally. During the last decade, those three sources were pretty well balanced and gave us good growth. But between 20 and 24, births less deaths slowed, which is what you'd expect given an aging population. Foreign in-migration actually increased a fair amount, but domestic in-migration turned somewhat negative. I think, to be honest, that this campaign chasing off immigrants is, to put it mildly, ill-advised. For us, if domestic in-migration doesn't improve a whole lot, then we're going to be in for a nasty surprise when the next few years of population estimates come out. That is probably the single biggest worry, and if I weren't talking about 1976, I would probably have been talking about that.
Let me add a different perspective, but very, very similar concerns that I have with immigration getting knocked on this. One of the things that you can see, and studies have shown this consistently, is a lot of talented immigrants coming in and helping America and the American economy grow in more on research side. Again, what you see is that, again, when you think about research and development, there is the front-end research. And a lot of times, as you can imagine, and again, there are several examples that we all know, be it like the big companies or even being local companies out here. What I worry about this whole idea on the immigration aspect is that the research, the front end of the research, is going to slow down. And that is significantly concerning for us. Again, like be it in university, be it in corporate America, the front-end research getting slowed down really means that newer innovation, newer technologies, newer solutions to healthcare, there's going to be a lot of slowness towards it, which means that we may not be able to satisfy the needs that are right now at this point today. So that is one of the significant concerns I have, is because of the some of these things that are happening, the front-end side of R&D might have some passage on some of the things that we might definitely need, given we're going to talk about AI, given there is a lot of things on what AI is going to do. We need that R to really make sure that Columbus and the economy really grows on that side.
And certainly the cutbacks in national funding of research are a big concern for that very same reason.
Well, you touched on AI. Last year, Ohio State made AI training a cornerstone of its plans for future graduates. while the general economy has been boosted by heavy investment in the AI sector. This is for all of you, how do you see artificial intelligence affecting the workplace and the economy in 2026? And do any of you have any concerns for a bubble?
So let me start with that. Again, like as you all know, Ohio State and our President Carter and our Provost Belanconda came strongly to say that every graduate of Ohio State would be AI fluent, meaning like everybody that's graduating by 2028 and 29 would not only know their domain expertise, but also what AI can do for them. So AI is here for us, good or bad. I mean, I do a lot of work on responsible AI and AI ethics. So I can see that the future of all our work is not about AI/humans, it's AI plus humans. So that's where we are going towards. What that really means is that there is going to be a lot of need for changes in how our workforce are getting trained. So one of the things that I think we should all think about is, okay, how do we make sure that we are going to use AI in the right way, in the positive way, and how do we make sure AI is used not locally, which is what we see a lot. I mean, I do a lot of work in this to find that companies use AI locally. I'm going to use it in this stream and this stream and this stream, versus you've got to integrate it throughout your organization. That's a big challenge. Some of the things that we do at Ohio State is actually make sure that we serve our constituents that are right here. So we have courses in Ohio State that are like $49 worth for AI in small business. We have 2-day programs and 1-day program. And we are focusing on all our students getting not only their core skill sets, but they're also getting an understanding of how to incorporate artificial intelligence and thinking along the lines of artificial intelligence so that we can all successfully use. So I do see there is a lot of potential from my standpoint of us all really getting that. I mean, I talked about the front end of R, but if you think about, there is also something that AI can help us in the front end of R if we can use it more effectively. So there is a lot of opportunities for all of us here if we can use it more responsibly and more effectively.
Let me just chime in from the national perspective. So if you look at AI, the most pronounced impact it had on growth last year was through capital expenditure. So it was investment, building out the data centers. If you look at just domestic production or activity in the U.S., it accounted for like 3/4 of the growth last year. So while I said growth was quite resilient and surprised the high side, a big part of that was because of AI investment and the build out. But the next wave, as Aravind was talking about, is how do we implement AI and these AI tools? And so you get the first boost from building things out. The second boost comes from productivity growth. And I think over the coming years, we're going to see more of that AI filtered through to productivity growth. And that's quite exciting, frankly. And the other thing, though, in the near term, which everyone's focused on, especially in the financial market or an investor, is there an AI bubble? You know, have the tech stock companies been overvalued? Well, I don't know. No one really knows, but it's something that we think about as a risk, right? Like what happens if there's a pullback in stock prices, right? Particularly tech. Now, maybe the rest of the stock market rallies and everything's good, but what we do know is that the gains from the S&P 500 have fueled something called the wealth effect. And the wealth effect means that if you're an asset holder or a stockholder, you feel wealthier, right? Your portfolio went up in value. You tend to spend more and save less on the margin. And if that just went away, then that would be something, one of the legs of the economy that would slow things down. It's not our view. We think overall the equity market and earnings are strong, but you know, you never do know about that. But those are kind of the three prongs that I see for AI. It's the CapEx, it's the financial market follow-on from stock prices, and then ultimately the productivity gains.
It seems to me that there's been an awful lot of hype surrounding AI, that AI can deliver us the moon and the stars. And that's not necessarily true. And so there have been layoffs due to AI, no doubt. But AI is really good at just kind of logic. It really stinks at creativity. So I have a feeling that over coming years, who knows when, some of those layoffs are going to be clawed back when business leaders think, shoot, it was supposed to do this. It's not doing this. What do we do now?
Just to add to that, I think you're absolutely right. I want to add to that. What I told you about AI plus humans. So we are all humans here. What are we supposed to think about it, right? Like, as we think about our own skill sets, we all have unique skill sets in terms of, I would say, critically thinking problems. We can do this better than any AI. The way we critically think about problems differently. AI can only solve problems that you're giving it to them. You as humans can frame it differently. So again, the whole idea of framing problems, the whole idea of taking risks in a very calculated manner, these are all very much of human traits. So what I think the whole system of humans and AI coexisting, with AI getting you the data science around it, humans bringing in the value around critical thinking, problem framing and solving, really entrepreneurially thinking about issues. Those are all the skill sets that can actually be very successful in today's companies.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. It's CMC's long-standing tradition to take audience questions. We'll move to questions from our live stream and in-person audiences in just a few minutes. If you have a question, please make your way over to the microphone. If you're joining us on YouTube, please type your questions into the chat. Before we take audience questions, panelists, I have one more for you. The general buzzword about the economy today is affordability. People are concerned that everything from insurance to groceries is significantly more expensive. While the economy has grown, these pricing concerns have soured consumer confidence. Do you see this issue improving in 2026? And what do you think can be done to improve it?
So great question. It is the new buzzword for sure, and for good reason. There really are affordability issues, especially when you think about what we call the K-shaped economy. Those on the lower part of the K are really struggling, right? So it seems like the price of everything has gone up for those households. And wage growth after COVID, actually for many, even lower skilled workers, was very rampant, very strong, but that's kind of slowed. And I think the other thing is households look at the price level, even though inflation has slowed, it has. It went up a little bit because of the tariffs, but overall, we've gone from 9% inflation to about 3% now. That's still a dramatic slowdown, but the price level hasn't gone down. Prices are still rising, they're just rising 3% instead of 9%. People are thinking back, pre-COVID, pre-2020, and saying, wait, I want that level of grocery prices or insurance and things like that. And unfortunately, we're not going back there unless we have a real severe recession, right? You need deflation to get that. So I think that is a struggle, one, and just in terms of sentiment. But I do think there's this reality too that if your income is growing much faster, right? If you're upper income household and you own assets, right? You own a home or stocks, you've seen a sharp appreciation in home prices and stocks, and where the lower income and middle income households haven't. So it's a struggle. Part of the One Big Beautiful Bill actually does help some of those households. It helps everyone, but it helps some of them. But I think the real way to help them is for labor market to be strong and for wages to pick up. That is really the best opportunity. So in dealing with students, Aravind from the university and Bill in the region, I think having a strong labor market really goes a long way to help with all of those struggles.
And completely agreed on that. Again, and I'm so excited, as several of you might know, that there are two important initiatives that are coming out from Ohio State, exactly tackling this affordability problem. One is Ohio State partnering with Columbus State, President Carter and President Harrison coming together to talk about the Buckeye Bridge program. Think about the power in it, where you're actually taking high school students in low affordable areas, less affordable areas, getting them into the Columbus State and having them transfer back into Ohio State and getting them job ready. That is very powerful if you think about it. I'm so excited about what Ohio State and Columbus State is partnering on that. There is also another program that we call the Regional Campus Program, where People who have adjusted annual household income less than 100,000 that are here in Columbus and in Ohio can come to Ohio State for free tuition, and then they go to some of our regional campuses and have their first year done, and then they can transfer back into Ohio State and complete their degree. Again, from an affordability standpoint, great opportunity there. And I know several other institutions locally are thinking about this, because if you think about workforce development, if we can make sure our next generation of workforce are ready for this kind of an AI-driven economy, and if that can be done in a cost-effective manner, that's humongous gains for Ohio, Central Ohio, and there are some initiatives that are already happening in 2026, and I'm really excited about that.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And now, Doug Buchanan with CMC is curating questions from our live stream audience. For those of you with us here in person, please join Doug at the microphone if you have a question. Doug, what is our first question?
Ben, thank you very much. Thank you so much to today's panelists. Great conversation. If you do have a question for today's panelists, this is your opportunity to ask. Please do join me here at the microphone. Again, if you're watching online, type your questions into the chat. We'll try to get to as many of those as we can. Great questions at CMC always have two things in common. They can be asked in about 30 seconds or less. And what punctuation mark does a question end with? They end with a question mark. Thank you very much. I'm going to launch us off with this one. Is federal economic data still reliable? Do you worry it's being manipulated?
I do not worry that it's being manipulated. The director of the BLS in Trump's first term came out and said that he could not have manipulated those data even if he had wanted to. There are many, many safeguards built in. Are they less reliable? No doubt. And that's not a question of manipulation. It's a question of cuts in funding. And so if you care about this sort of thing, it would be a good chat to have with the federal representatives and ask them to restore the funding to BLS, Census, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and so forth.
I just want to add real quick, totally agree with Bill on that. And I would say the survey responses from companies have gone down. That's something also that, because of budget cutbacks, it's hard for the government agencies to follow up on. That's why we're seeing bigger revisions. They eventually will catch most of the data, but that's where you get these big revisions, right? And then they ultimately, like with employment, what Bill was talking about earlier, they go back and look at the actual tax data, and then when they reconcile it, they find out, oh, there were actually a lot less jobs than we thought previously. But that's, the struggle right now. But I fully agree they're not being manipulated.
Thank you very much for a very interesting conversation so far. I'm Amy Claiborne, president of Families Flourish. So you talked about the K-shaped economy, and my question is, at the lower end, is it growing? And in the past, we've heard about the middle class being hollowed out, the higher income people getting larger. And so what does that look like now in terms of how the economy is affecting, most importantly, the middle class, but people at the lower end?
Yes, so great question. I would say that what you're seeing is more people actually rising up, but and that is somewhat, it doesn't get covered by the media, right? But those that are not and left behind, like those that are 100,000 less, who would have thought a few years ago 100,000 was, you would be struggling, but you are, right? That because, particularly on the service side, but things have gone up, it's a struggle for those who are sort of not keeping up, or, not the boat isn't rising as fast. So I wouldn't say that the numbers are more, but I would say the divide is greater. Like there's something called the Gini coefficient in economics we talk about. It's the difference between wealth, and the disparity has grown. And I think that's really at the core of the problem.
This is not a new thing at all. Prior to the 1980s, production wages were very, very much in tandem with productivity increases. But since about 1980, 81, they've diverged. And so what you see is the upper class going like this, the top 1%, everybody else kind of going like that. And that is a recipe for a lack of economic growth, political discontent, and just not productive economies.
Thank you. We'll see who wants to jump in on this one. What is your prediction for Intel's future in Ohio?
Heavens, not me. Not me.
Again, as you all know, there are several reasons why we all know there is a slow, I would say it's not completely done, but it's slowing down the process. That my only hope is that as you think about this, as we think about more of, if you think about Intel, I don't worry about Intel, I worry about the other sub-sector industries that are coming around. I think it's very important for us to not lose that sight about like Intel jobs is not just Intel jobs. It's the jobs of their suppliers and their sub-suppliers and so on and so forth. So the more we focus on that growth, I think, again, that could actually help us to re-energize some of the conversations that we're having from locally as well as at the federal level to create this. So, but there is a lot of, I would say, opportunity space for their suppliers to actually come in and establish presence right here. And our focus should be on that rather than just focusing on whether Intel is coming here or not.
After Intel was announced, I worked with my friends at Morpsey to develop ideas of what that could mean for population and employment growth. And those multipliers are really, really big. So if we can do anything to nudge Intel along or to use that site in some productive way, that would really, really be helpful.
Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Fox with Community Strategy Partners. Bill, we've heard you speak in the past about how our housing shortage here in Central Ohio could become an impediment to growth. We also have seen tariffs affect the cost of construction materials, and now we're seeing that the labor supply for construction is being constrained by the policies on immigration. What are your predictions and any of the panelists about how these things are going to affect housing in Central Ohio, and is there anything we can do locally or regionally to improve it?
Well, we've certainly increased our construction of housing, and housing construction is the big thing that we can do to improve affordability. Our vacancy rate is in the toilet, and we really need to bring that up so that we can have an adequate supply of housing of all different types for people who want to move in or just want to move up. We are doing much better on construction. We're still not where we need to be, but certainly the Zone In initiative is going to be very, very helpful. We need to work on more of the suburban communities and perhaps try to tamp down some NIMBYism so that everybody can collaborate on this need for housing.
Hi, Tony Bell, and my question is about the economy or the economies of the people in the lower part of the K. Oftentimes, we see that it is the minority populations who tend to be in this lower part. And have you any further predictions or further data that you can talk about seeing them trend as they're trending potentially down, and what can we do about it?
Well, I talked last year about the study that I did last year, looking at just the ability of people in minority communities to access the growth and wealth that we're generating here in Central Ohio. By one measure, out of the 54 largest metros in the country, we rank 54th in racial economic equity. And so I had several suggestions. Probably the most important one is to focus on the issue. As I said, if we focus on these issues and we work together on them, they improve. So I suggested a task force, and I think that's still a good idea. I think we need to do it.
Just to add to that, right? I mean, if you think about this from a holistic standpoint, it's an ecosystem, right? Like if you want to have influence on that particular thing, then you need to focus on schools there. We have really not so good schools in some of those regions. So how do we really get that system better? How do we really think about, we talked about housing, transportation. How do we think about transportation differently to make sure that there is more access? So it's not just one problem, it's that entire ecosystem have to be worked on to make sure meaningful impact happen to those communities.
Thank you, everyone. We have about just a couple of minutes, about 2 or 3 minutes left for a final question. Maybe this is a good question for a rapid fire answers. If you had one message for local business owners about navigating uncertainty this year, what would it be?
Well, I would just say here and everywhere, it's adaptability, really, because there are a lot of different forces at play, and being nimble and adaptive is really key.
100% agreed, and I think everybody should be embracing the readiness to change. Today it's AI, tomorrow it could be quantum, day after tomorrow it could be something else. I mean, this is what technology will give us. We've got to embrace that change. We've got to make sure we are learning all the time. So I think like that adaptability and learning, ability to learn, because there is no age for learning. Anybody can learn at any point of time. We've got to embrace that and really focus on that. I think that's very important for success.
Adaptability is the key. As I said, pay attention to the economic numbers, the economic forecasts, see what people are thinking, and respond appropriately.
Great. Well, everyone, I wish we had more time, but I'm getting the wrap-up signal from Doug. So we'll turn it over to Deb Scheer, Senior Vice President of Global Trade and Investment at One Columbus, who's here on behalf of the Columbus Partnership for concluding remarks. Deb?
Well, thank you, Ben. Today's discussion delivered what this forum does best: thoughtful analysis, real data, and perspective on where the economy is headed. The insights shared here reinforce an important point. The Columbus region's trajectory is shaped by deliberate choices, sustained leadership, and a willingness to prepare for what comes next. Our economy is transforming. It continues to diversify. It's being influenced by global forces, technological changes, and demographic shifts that demand focus and coordination. That context is exactly why One Columbus exists. Our role is to help the region compete for long-term growth, to align business, civic, and public leadership around shared priorities, and to make sure that opportunity keeps pace with momentum as the region evolves. We've demonstrated an ability to grow. We've earned national credibility. We've attracted historic investment. Those outcomes matter because they create a platform for the next phase of progress. But they also bring responsibility. growth requires capacity. It requires planning. It requires sustained attention to workforce, housing, infrastructure, and innovation. At the Columbus Partnership, we stay focused on the future. We bring leaders together. We help position the region for the next cycle of opportunity. And we work to ensure that we remain competitive, resilient, and prepared so we all have an opportunity to succeed. The conversation today reinforces why that work matters and why collaboration across institutions remain one of our strongest advantages. We're proud of where this region stands, and we're focused on what comes next. With that said, please help me thank the sponsors of today's forum: Ian Alexander Photography, PNC, the Robert Weiler Company, the Columbus Partnership, and Smoot Construction. Let's give them a round of applause. And thank you to the presenting sponsor of Livestream, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and our great partners, Downtown Columbus Incorporated, the Columbus Dispatch, and the Columbus Metropolitan Library. Thank you to the National Veterans Memorial and Museum for hosting us. And thank you and a very special appreciation to our panelists, Kathy Bostjancic, Aravind Chandrasekaran, I butchered that, sorry. AC, thank you. Bill LaFayette, and our host, Ben Lanka. So, thank you again for your insights. And if today's conversation has left you hungry to learn more, our fantastic partners and friends at the Columbus Metropolitan Library recommend checking out In This Economy, How Money and Markets Really Work by Kyla Scanlon. And lastly, please make plans to join us right here again next Wednesday for CMC's next forum, Black Men in Central Ohio, Realities, Resilience, and the Road Ahead. Thank you to everyone. We could not do this without you. Please have a fantastic afternoon and a wonderful 2026. Thank you again.